My name is Natalie Mercer, and I was 33 years old the night my mother-in-law tried to prove my daughter was not my husband's child. She chose my daughter's 4th birthday. That should tell you everything you need to know about Evelyn Pembroke. There were pink balloons tied to the backs of the dining chairs, a unicorn cake on the sideboard, and my little girl asleep upstairs with frosting still at the corner of her mouth because she had insisted she was not tired until her eyes closed halfway through the last present. Downstairs, 13 adults sat around my father-in-law's mahogany table, pretending the evening was normal. Evelyn stood at the head of the table in a pale blue silk blouse, one hand resting on a sealed manila envelope. She looked at my husband, Aaron, and said, "Before we all go home, there is something you need to know about Sophie." The room went quiet. Aaron frowned. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn slid the envelope toward him. "I had a DNA test done. No one moved." My sister-in-law dropped her wine glass against her plate with a sharp little sound. My father-in-law, George Pembroke, went completely still, and Evelyn looked directly at me with the calm satisfaction of a woman who believed she had finally caught the thief in her house. She said, "A mother knows when something is wrong. Sophie has never looked like a Pembroke." My husband's face changed. Not toward me, toward her. But Evelyn did not notice. Women like Evelyn rarely notice the moment power starts leaving the room. She continued, "For 4 years, Natalie has asked this family to accept a child whose eyes, hair, and coloring do not come from us. I think Aaron deserves the truth." 13 adults. One sleeping child upstairs. One envelope meant to destroy my marriage. What Evelyn did not know was that I had found out about the test 17 days earlier. I had spoken to the lab. I had hired a lawyer. I had copied every message, every photo caption, every comment she had made about my daughter's face since the day Sophie was born. And most importantly, I had already seen the 4th page of that report. The page Evelyn had not read carefully. The page that did not expose me. It exposed her. So when my husband picked up the envelope, I did not stop him. I did not cry. I did not beg. I simply looked at Evelyn Pembroke and said, "Go ahead. Let him read it." Before I tell you what happened when Aaron reached page 4, I need you to understand the Pembroke family. From the outside, they looked like old money. They were not. They were new money that had practiced sounding old. George Pembroke owned Pembroke Custom Homes, a residential construction company that built expensive houses on the Connecticut shoreline for people who liked saying words like reclaimed, coastal, and curated. Evelyn liked to say George had built the company from nothing. That was almost true. George had built the company from skill, debt, and a back that hurt every time it rained. Evelyn had built the myth around it. She turned a construction business into a family legacy by making sure every Christmas card, charity luncheon, and town magazine profile used the phrase Pembroke name. The Pembroke name stood for quality. The Pembroke name stood for character. The Pembroke name stood for family. She said it so often it stopped sounding like a name and started sounding like a brand. Aaron was their oldest child, 35 when this happened. A project manager in the business, though not because he needed his parents to hand him work, Aaron could build anything. He understood load-bearing walls and stubborn inspectors and the quiet panic of a client who had spent $2 million and still wanted. The pantry moved 3 inches to the left. He had his father's patience. He had his father's hands. Or so everyone said. His younger sister, Meredith, was Evelyn's favorite kind of daughter. Pretty agreeable in public, sharp in private, and very good at turning her mother's opinions into social media captions. Meredith had married a commercial lender named Blake and lived 10 minutes from the Pembroke house in a white colonial with boxwoods she never watered herself. I met Aaron when I was 27 and working as a speech-language pathologist at a pediatric clinic in New Haven. He was there with his foreman's son, a 6-year-old named Ben who had survived a stroke after heart surgery and was learning to speak clearly again. Aaron came to one of Ben's sessions because the boy's father could not get off work. He sat in the corner in work boots, quietly taking notes on exercises that were not even for his own child. Afterward, he asked 3 practical questions, thanked me, and said, "You made him feel like he was not broken." I liked him immediately. Not because he was handsome, though he was. Dark hair, square jaw, a careful way of listening. I liked him because he noticed the work. Most people did not. Most people thought speech therapy was flashcards and cute games. They did not see the planning, the repetition, the slow reconstruction of confidence after a child's words had been taken by injury, delay, trauma, or fear. Aaron saw it. We married 18 months later. Evelyn wore champagne to the wedding. Not white. Champagne. She told me the difference 3 times. My mother, who had raised me after my father died, whispered, "Champagne is just white with a trust fund." I nearly choked during the vows. For the first year, I believed Evelyn and I would find a rhythm. Not closeness, maybe, but peace. I was wrong. Evelyn did not want peace. She wanted position. And she had decided before I ever married her son that I was not the right woman to stand beside the Pembroke name. Her first questions about my family came disguised as curiosity. "Where did your people come from, Natalie?" My people, as if we were livestock at auction. My mother's side is from Maine. I told her the first Thanksgiving. My father's family was mostly from Western Pennsylvania. "And your father passed when you were young?" "When I was 9? She touched her pearl bracelet. A soft clink. A habit I would come to recognize. That must have left a mark. Not, "I am sorry." Not, "That must have been hard." That must have left a mark. Evelyn liked every person categorized. Stable. Questionable. Useful. Embarrassing. She never said which box she put me in, but I knew. I had grown up in a duplex in Bridgeport with a mother who cleaned dental offices at night after teaching preschool all day. I was the first person in my family to get a master's degree. I bought my own car. I paid my own student loans. I had a career, a license, retirement contributions, and a framed certificate over my desk. But to Evelyn, I would always be the girl from a rented half-house whose father was gone and whose mother wore sensible shoes to formal events. She introduced me as Aaron's wife, the therapist. Never just Natalie. Never Dr. Mercer, though I did have my clinical doctorate by then. Not because I needed the title, because she knew withholding it was a way of reminding me who got named fully in her rooms. When Sophie was born, I thought things might soften. Babies do that to people sometimes. They rearrange old furniture inside hard hearts. For 3 months, Evelyn seemed almost tender. She brought casseroles. She bought tiny sweaters. She held Sophie with an expression that looked close to wonder. Sophie was born with dark hair and gray-blue eyes, like most newborns. Evelyn said, "She has Aaron's brow." George said, "She has his grip." Aaron cried the first time Sophie curled her fingers around his thumb. I remember watching him in the hospital light, our daughter against his chest, and thinking, whatever Evelyn is, this is safe. Then Sophie's eyes changed. Not blue, not brown, hazel, green near the pupil, gold around the edges, with a dark ring that made them look older than her face. Her hair lightened too, from newborn black to honey brown curls with a copper shine in the sun. She looked like my father's side. My grandmother had those eyes. My father had that hair. I had photos, old ones, faded at the corners, full of people Evelyn had never cared to ask about. At Sophie's first birthday party, Evelyn held her on the back patio and stared at her face too long. "Such unusual coloring," she said. I smiled. My dad had the same eyes. Did he? Yes. What was his name again? Daniel Mercer. Right. She passed Sophie back to me. Interesting. Interesting became the first stone. By Sophie's second birthday, Evelyn had built a wall. The comments never came as accusations. That was how she protected herself. She knew exactly how to wound without leaving a clean edge. At Easter brunch, she said, "Sophie is such a little mystery. No Pembroke curls anywhere." At a 4th of July barbecue, she told Meredith, just loud enough for me to hear. Strong genes usually show up somewhere. At Christmas, while Sophie played under the tree, Evelyn said, "She favors Natalie's side completely, not a trace of Aaron. Isn't nature fascinating?" Nobody answered. That was part of the damage. Silence makes rumors feel taller. Meredith helped from the shadows. She posted photos of Sophie with captions like, "Our little wildflower. No idea where those curls came from." At first, I told myself I was being sensitive. Then I started documenting. I did not do it because I planned revenge. I did it because documentation is how I understand patterns. In my work, I track progress in tiny increments. Number of words produced, percent accuracy, prompt level, jaw tension, breath support, avoidance behaviors. Children tell you the truth with patterns long before they can say it. Adults do too. So I opened a note on my phone called Sophie Comments. May 7th, Evelyn. No Pembroke curls. July 4th, Evelyn to Meredith. Strong genes usually show up somewhere. September 12th, Meredith Instagram caption. Mystery eyes. December 24th, Evelyn. Not a trace of Aaron. By the end of 6 months, I had 23 entries. I showed Aaron after Christmas. He read them quietly at the kitchen table while Sophie slept upstairs. His jaw tightened. "She says stupid things," he said. "No, she says targeted things." He rubbed both hands over his face. "I will talk to her." "When?" Soon. Soon is a dangerous word in marriage. It means not yet, dressed nicely. Aaron loved me. I believe that completely. But Aaron had been trained from birth to manage Evelyn, not confront her. George did it too. Meredith did it by imitation. The entire Pembroke family moved around Evelyn's moods like furniture arranged around a grand piano no one was allowed to play. If Evelyn felt slighted, someone apologized. If Evelyn felt worried, someone adjusted plans. If Evelyn felt suspicious, everyone gave her the benefit of the doubt. By the time Sophie was 3, I was done donating doubt. The toothbrush disappeared on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I remember because Tuesdays were my late clinic days. Aaron had a foundation inspection in Rhode Island. I had 3 back-to-back after-school sessions. Evelyn offered to pick Sophie up from preschool and keep her until dinner. I did not love it, but Sophie adored her grandfather, and George promised to be home by 4. I packed Sophie's pink backpack with leggings, snacks, her stuffed rabbit, and the purple toothbrush she used after lunch because preschool sent reminders about dental hygiene like they were running a military unit. When I picked Sophie up that evening, the toothbrush was gone. I threw it away, Evelyn said before I asked. Why? It looked disgusting. It was new. Children chew things. Natalie, I did you a favor. Her tone was too light. That was the first thing. The second thing was Meredith sitting at Evelyn's kitchen island with her laptop open and a small padded mailer beside her. She closed the laptop the second I walked in. Too fast. The third thing was a clear plastic bag on the counter. Empty, except for the faint purple smear of toothpaste near the seal. When Evelyn saw me look at it, she picked it up and dropped it into the trash. Snack bag, she said. Sophie ran in then, shouting about a puzzle she had finished with Grandpa, and the moment passed. But not for me. My mind took a picture. Toothbrush gone. Laptop closed. Mailer. Plastic bag. Evelyn too bright. Meredith too quiet. That night, after Sophie fell asleep, I asked Aaron, "Did your mother ever mention wanting a DNA test?" He looked genuinely confused. What? Nothing. I did not push. Not yet. I bought Sophie a new toothbrush the next morning. Then I opened the note on my phone and added, April 9th, purple toothbrush missing after visit with Evelyn. Plastic bag and padded mailer observed in kitchen. Meredith present. Possible. DNA collection? I stared at that last sentence for a long time. Possible DNA collection. It looked absurd. Then it looked inevitable. The call came 8 days later. I was in a treatment room with a 6-year-old named Jessa who had selective mutism. Jessa spoke at home but not at school, not in public, not to most adults. We were working with picture cards and a toy cash register, building toward one whispered word. The clinic phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Then my personal phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I would let it go. But something in my body knew. Dr. Mercer? A woman asked. Yes. My name is Kelly Hart from Clear Gene Family Services. I am calling regarding a sample received under the name Sophie Pembroke, age 4. The room narrowed. Jessa was lining plastic coins by color on the table. I stepped into the hallway. I did not submit a sample. That is why I am calling. The account lists Evelyn Pembroke as the submitting adult and grandmother. Because the profile indicates the sample belongs to a minor, we require verification from a parent or legal guardian before processing any medical or familial report. My mouth was dry.
Cancel it.
Of course. We can cancel the medical add-on immediately. I should tell you there may be a companion ancestry profile connected to a consumer database that operates through a separate consent pathway. Would you like me to flag the minor profile and restrict matching?
Yes.
Do you have documentation of guardianship? I am her mother. We will send the verification link to your email. I gave it. My voice stayed calm. It always does when something is actually wrong. After I hung up, I stood in the hallway for exactly 11 seconds. Then I went back into the room.
Jessa looked up at me and whispered, barely audible, coin. Her first word to me in 4 months.
I smiled so hard my face hurt. Good, I said softly, again. Because children deserve the adult in front of them to stay present, even when that adult's life has just tilted. After the session, I sat in my car and called a lawyer. Her name was Celeste Park. Family law, privacy law, 17 years of experience, office in New Haven. She had been recommended by a clinic parent years earlier after a custody dispute I was not supposed to know about but did. Celeste answered her own phone, which surprised me. I told her everything. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, "Do not confront anyone yet." I almost laughed.
You do not think I should call my husband?
I think if you call your husband, he calls his mother. If he calls his mother, she cries, minimizes, and destroys whatever paper trail still exists. I hated that she was right.
What she did is illegal?
Unauthorized genetic testing of a minor without parental consent is a serious privacy violation. The lab did the correct thing by calling you. The consumer database may be messier, but we can still pursue restriction and documentation. What do I do?
First, preserve everything, every comment, every post, every date. Second, request written confirmation from ClearGene. Third, if she is planning to use this publicly, let her.
Let her? If she says it in front of witnesses, she stops being a concerned grandmother and becomes a person who knowingly weaponized a child's genetic information to accuse you. I sat in my car watching clinic staff cross the parking lot with lunch bags and tired shoulders. Celeste, I think she has already planned something. Then let her build the stage, she said, but make sure you control the lights. The next 17 days were the calmest I have ever pretended to be. I got written confirmation from ClearGene that Evelyn had submitted a minor's sample without parental consent.
I sent the email to Celeste. I screenshotted Meredith's captions.
I photographed my note log.
I backed everything up to cloud storage and a flash drive I kept in my desk at work.
I also did something Celeste did not ask me to do. I learned how the consumer DNA platform worked. Not because I wanted to become an amateur detective. Because Evelyn had touched my child's genetic information, and I needed to know where it had gone. The profile she created was not hard to find. That was the terrifying part. People who believe themselves righteous are often careless with passwords. Evelyn had used an old family email Meredith once mentioned while planning Thanksgiving photos. The password was Pembroke Legacy. Capital P, capital L.
Of course it was.
I logged in once. I know how that sounds. I am not proud of it. But I was my daughter's mother, and someone had made a file out of her body without my permission.
Inside the account, Sophie's profile had already been linked to a public family matching database.
I downloaded nothing at first. I only looked. The paternity report showed what I already knew. Evelyn Pembroke. Probability of paternity, 99.9999%. My daughter was my husband's daughter.
The truth I had never doubted sat there in black print, made ridiculous by having to exist.
But below the paternity section was the familial match page. That was where the first crack opened.
Thomas Reed, age 67, Branford, Connecticut.
Predicted relationship to Sophie, biological grandfather or equivalent. I stared at the name.
Thomas Reed?
Not George Pembroke. Not any name I recognized from Aaron's family. The page listed shared segments, confidence level, and matched paternal line. Paternal line. Meaning not mine, not a distant cousin, not a mistake likely to vanish under scrutiny. A close match.
A grandfather-level match.
I took one screenshot. One. Then I logged out. My hands were cold. I sent the screenshot to Celeste with one line. This was in the account.
She called me within 10 minutes.
Natalie, she said, listen carefully. Do not contact this man. Do not dig into him beyond what is publicly available. Do not involve your husband yet. We need to proceed cleanly.
Who is he?
I do not know. But if the match is accurate, he may be Aaron's biological father. The words made no sound in my apartment. They simply appeared and took up the whole room. Aaron's biological father. George had raised Aaron. George had taught him to frame walls, tie knots, drive stick, make pancakes, apologize properly, measure twice. And Evelyn, who had spent years questioning my daughter's blood, may have been carrying the biggest bloodline secret in the family.
I did not feel triumph.
I felt dread. Because DNA does not just expose liars. It wounds people who never deserved the knife. I found out who Thomas Reed was through a public record search and one old newspaper archive. Thomas Reed had owned Reed Stone and Tile, a masonry company that subcontracted with Pembroke Custom Homes 36 years earlier, when George was still a young builder trying to get his company off the ground. There were photos in the local paper from a 1987 charity build. George Pembroke on the left, Thomas Reed on the right.
Between them, Evelyn.
She was 25 in the photo. Dark hair then, not blonde. Laughing at something outside the frame. Thomas stood too close. Or maybe I was seeing ghosts because I knew what the DNA said. I printed the article, not to weaponize it, to understand the timeline.
Aaron was born 9 months after that charity build. I sat at my kitchen table with the printout, the clear gene confirmation, my notes, and the screenshot of Thomas Reed's match. Then I looked up at the monitor where Sophie's preschool photo sat in a cheap wooden frame. Hazel eyes, honey curls, gap between her front teeth. My little girl who loved worms, rain boots, pancakes, and asking whether the moon followed our car.
Evelyn had turned her into evidence. That was the part I could not forgive.
Adults can fight with adults. But the moment you steal from a child's body to satisfy your suspicion, you cross a line that does not move back. 2 days later, Meredith handed me the wen.
I was at the Pembroke house picking up Sophie's blue raincoat. Meredith was in the sunroom on speakerphone, pacing. "Mom is doing it Friday," she said. "At the anniversary dinner. She said Aaron needs to hear it in front of Dad so he cannot brush it off." I stopped in the hallway.
She has the envelope. She says the truth will finally be on paper.
A pause. Then Meredith laughed nervously. "I know, Natalie is going to lose it."
I picked up the raincoat.
When I walked into the sunroom, Meredith ended the call so fast she nearly dropped the phone.
"Oh, hey," she said.
"Hey."
"You okay?"
"Great, just grabbing Sophie's coat." My voice was smooth. Too smooth, maybe.
But Meredith was not good at hearing anyone but herself. In the car, I called Celeste.
"Friday," I said. "At George and Evelyn's anniversary dinner."
"How many people?"
"Family, maybe 12.
"Good. Good. Witnesses." I closed my eyes. She thinks she is going to expose me.
Celeste's voice softened. "Then let her explain why she stole your child's DNA in front of the people she invited to watch." Friday arrived with rain.
A steady spring rain that turned the roads silver and made everyone drive as if they had forgotten water existed.
George and Evelyn's 37th anniversary dinner was held at their house because Evelyn said restaurants were too loud for meaningful family conversation. Meaningful family conversation, in Evelyn's world, usually meant she had decided something and wanted witnesses.
I dressed carefully, not like a woman going to battle.
Like a woman going to court.
Black trousers, cream blouse, small gold earrings from my mother.
Hair pinned low.
Sophie wore a green dress with white tights and red rain boots because she had developed opinions. And, honestly, they were good ones.
Aaron carried her into the house under an umbrella. She squealed when George opened the door.
"A papa?"
George lifted her with the kind of joy that makes people younger for a second.
He had built half the houses in 3 towns, but Sophie remained his favorite structure.
"Look at those boots," he said. "They are frog boots," Sophie corrected. "Of course they are."
Evelyn appeared behind him. She kissed Aaron's cheek.
She kissed Sophie's hair. She did not kiss me. "Dinner is almost ready," she said. The envelope was on the sideboard. Manila.
Thick, waiting beside a vase of white tulips.
I saw it. Evelyn saw me see it. For 1 second, we looked at each other like 2 women on opposite sides of a locked door.
Then Sophie tugged my hand.
"Mommy, can I show Papa my frog jump?"
"Yes, baby."
She jumped 3 times in the foyer. George applauded like she had solved physics. Dinner began at 7. George at one end.
Evelyn at the other.
Aaron beside me. Meredith across from me with Blake. Aunt Lorna, George's sister, near the window. Cousin Peter and his wife, Elise. Evelyn's older friend, Charlotte Vance, who was not family, but functioned as Evelyn's witness for events she wanted retold. Sophie ate buttered noodles at a small side table and fell asleep on the den couch before dessert, frog boots still on. That mattered. She did not hear what came next.
I will always be grateful for that. Dinner was roasted chicken, asparagus, and Evelyn's lemon potatoes.
Conversation stayed shallow. Aunt Lorna talked about a neighbor's tree. Blake described mortgage rates as if anyone had asked. George told Sophie she could take leftover cake home for breakfast, which made Evelyn say, "George." In that warning tone, wives develop after decades. At 8:20, Evelyn stood. She did not tap a glass. She did not need to. Every person at that table had been trained to notice her rising. "I need to say something before dessert," she said. Aaron looked at me. I looked at the table. Evelyn walked to the sideboard and picked up the envelope. Meredith inhaled. Aunt Lorna frowned. George's smile faded. Evelyn returned to the table and placed the envelope in front of Aaron. "Son," she said, "I did something because I love you." That sentence should be illegal. Aaron stared at the envelope. "What is this?" "A DNA test for Sophie?" George said. "Evelyn." Not sharply. More like a man seeing a car drift across the center line. Evelyn ignored him. "For years, I have watched you avoid the obvious. Sophie does not look like you. She does not look like our family. And I know everyone has been too polite to say it." Aunt Lorna said, "I have not." Evelyn pushed on. "I submitted a sample because you deserve certainty." Aaron's chair moved back an inch. "You did what?" Evelyn looked at me. "I am sorry, Natalie, truly. But a family has a right to know whether it is being deceived." There it was. The knife placed gently on the table. Meredith looked down. Blake stared into his wine. Charlotte Vance leaned forward, hungry for history. Aaron picked up the envelope. His hands were not shaking. Mine were folded in my lap. Inside, I felt strangely calm, not peaceful, prepared. Aaron opened the envelope and read the first page. His eyes moved left to right. Then again. Evelyn watched him the way people watch a slot machine, waiting for proof that hope has paid out. Aaron looked up. His voice was low. "She is mine." Evelyn blinked. "What?" "Sophie is my daughter. Probability of paternity, 99.9999%. He held up the page. The room exhaled in pieces. Aunt Lorna muttered, "Good Lord." George closed his eyes. Meredith covered her mouth. Evelyn reached for the paper. "There must be another page." "There is," I said. My voice surprised everyone except me. Aaron turned. I looked at him, not Evelyn. "Read page 4. Aaron flipped the pages. Methodology, consent summary, familial match report. His eyes stopped. He read silently first. Then he read out loud because the room had gone so quiet it demanded sound. Thomas Reed, age 67, predicted relationship to Sophie Pembroke, biological grandfather or equivalent, paternal line match. He looked confused, then less confused, then not confused at all. He looked at George. "Dad?" George's face had gone pale. Not guilty pale. Wounded pale. "I do not know any Thomas Reed." Aunt Lorna made a sound. A small intake of breath. Evelyn's hands gripped the back of her chair. Aaron turned to his mother. "Who is Thomas Reed?" Evelyn did not answer. The silence answered first. It spread across the table, touching every plate, every glass,
every person. George stood slowly.
Evelyn,
She swallowed.
it is not what it looks like.
George's voice was quiet.
That is what people say when it is exactly what it looks like.
Aunt Lorna whispered, Tommy Reed?
George turned toward her. You know him. Lorna looked at Evelyn, then at her brother.
He did stonework on your early builds, before Aaron was born. Aaron stood now too.
Mom.
Evelyn's face was white. The performance was gone.
No silk blouse, no pearls, no heritage speech could dress this moment. You have to understand, she said. George said, start with the truth.
She looked at me then.
Not because I mattered to the explanation. Because she needed somewhere else to place the blame. You did this. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the instinct was so pure, so immediate.
Caught people reach for the nearest innocent person and call it cause. No, I said. You did this. You took my daughter's toothbrush. You submitted her DNA without parental consent. You invited everyone here. You placed the envelope in front of Aaron. I paused. You built the stage, Evelyn. I just let the lights come on. George's hand went to the back of his chair. Evelyn, is Aaron my son? No one breathed. Aaron looked at George, and I saw something pass between them that had nothing to do with genetics. A whole life. Training wheels, baseball gloves, sawhorses, first jobs, hospital waiting rooms, arguments, Christmas mornings. A father and son standing on the edge of a word that could not undo love, but could still split history open. Evelyn began crying. Real crying. Ugly and human. I was 26, she said. Your father and I were engaged, and George was working all the time, and Thomas was just there. It was one mistake. George did not move. One mistake is a night, he said. Aaron is 35. Evelyn covered her mouth. I thought he was yours. Did you? She did not answer. Aunt Lorna looked away. Meredith was crying now. Aaron was not. That worried me more. He stared at the report as if the paper might become something else if he looked hard enough. Evelyn reached toward him. Aaron, please, you are my son. He stepped back. Yes, he said, I am. That is the problem. Then he looked at George. Dad. George's face broke. Just a little. Enough to show the fracture under the man. I am your father, George said. Aaron nodded once. I know. That was the only merciful sentence in the room.
Shame.
Then Evelyn made the mistake that finished her. She turned on me again. If Natalie had not snooped, Aaron's head snapped toward her. Snooped? I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Not dramatic. Not thrown. Placed. I was contacted by ClearGene because you submitted a minor's sample without parental consent. I have written confirmation. I also have documentation of your comments about Sophie over the last 2 years, Meredith's posts, and the consumer profile you created using my child's genetic information. Evelyn looked at the folder as if it were a snake. I was protecting my son. No, Aaron said. You were protecting your pride. Celeste had prepared the cease and desist letter in advance. I slid it across the table. This is from my attorney.
You are not to submit, store, share, or discuss Sophie's genetic information again. You are not to make accusations about her parentage. You are not to contact any testing company using her name. If you do, we pursue civil action.
Meredith whispered. Mom, you said Natalie had agreed.
Evelyn turned sharply. I said she would never agree. That tiny correction did more damage than a confession. Meredith recoiled. George picked up his coat from the back of the chair.
George, Evelyn said.
He looked at her. Do not.
One sentence.
37 years inside it. Aaron took my hand. We are getting Sophie. We found her on the den couch, curled under a knitted blanket with one frog boot on and one on the floor. Aaron lifted her carefully. She mumbled, Cake? Tomorrow, bug, he whispered. On our way to the door, Evelyn stepped in front of us. Natalie, please, I made a mistake. I looked at her. The woman who had inspected my background like a flawed foundation. The woman who questioned my daughter's face. The woman who turned a 4-year-old into a biological argument.
No, I said. You made a decision. Then you made it again and again until it became a dinner. We left. Behind us, the Pembroke house stayed bright in the rain, every window lit like the inside of a dollhouse. From the outside, perfect. Inside, split open.
The drive home was silent for 12 minutes. Rain moved across the windshield in silver lines. Sophie slept in the back seat, her head tilted, her curls damp from the run to the car.
Aaron held the steering wheel with both hands.
Finally, he said, How long did you know?
About the test?
17 days. About Thomas Reed? 12. He nodded. Not angry. Not calm either. Something in between. Why did you not tell me? I had expected the question. I had rehearsed honest answers and rejected the ones that sounded too clean. Because if I had told you, you would have gone to her privately. She would have cried. She would have said she was worried. She would have made it about her fear, and somehow, by the end, we would have been asked to forgive her quietly.
He said nothing.
I needed you to see what she was willing to do when she thought she had power.
The wipers moved. Back and forth. Back and forth.
Finally, he whispered, She stole Sophie's DNA. Yes. She thought I would leave you.
Yes. She let Dad raise me for 35 years without telling him.
I looked at his profile in the streetlight. Aaron, George is your father. I know.
His voice cracked on the second word.
I know he is. That is why this hurts. He pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine.
For a long time, neither of us moved.
Then he reached across the center console and took my hand. Thank you for protecting our daughter.
I squeezed his fingers.
Always.
The next morning, Aaron called George. I sat at the kitchen table with coffee gone cold while Sophie built a tower of blocks on the floor.
Aaron stood by the back door, phone to his ear. Dad, he said.
Then he stopped.
I heard George's voice through the speaker, low and rough. Still Dad. Aaron closed his eyes. Always Dad.
George cried then. I did not hear it exactly,
but I saw it on Aaron's face.
Some truths destroy only what was false.
Some truths, painful as they are, show what was real all along. The weeks after the dinner were messy in the quiet way family disasters often are.
No one knew where to sit with the new version of history.
George moved into Aunt Lorna's guest room for a month.
He told Aaron he needed space, not from him, but from the house where every photograph now had a question behind it. Meredith sent me a text 2 days later.
I am sorry. I believed Mom because it was easier than questioning her. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. Do not post about Sophie again."
She replied, "I won't."
Small, but real. Blake unfollowed me on Instagram, which I considered a gift.
Evelyn called Aaron 23 times in the first week.
He answered once.
I was in the room.
"I need to explain," she said. Aaron put the phone on speaker.
Explain to my wife first.
Silence. Then Evelyn, smaller than I had ever heard her. "Natalie, I was wrong."
I waited.
"I was afraid."
Of what?
Another silence.
Of Sophie not being ours.
"No," I said. "That was the story you used. What were you actually afraid of?" She began to cry. Aaron did not rescue her.
That mattered.
"Finally," she said, "of the past coming back."
There it was. Honest, finally, because all prettier answers had been stripped away. I said, "You handed your fear to my child. That is why you are not seeing her right now. She is my granddaughter. She is our daughter."
Aaron added, "And you will not see her until we decide it is safe." Evelyn sobbed. A month earlier, that sound would have moved him. It still hurt him.
I could see that.
But hurt no longer meant obedience. He ended the call. I loved him more in that moment than I had known was possible after so much damage.
Yet.
Thomas Reed did not learn anything from us at first. Celeste was very clear. Do not contact him until Aaron decides what he wants. This is his information too.
Aaron waited 6 weeks.
Then he wrote a letter. Not an email.
A letter.
He sat at the kitchen table after Sophie went to bed and wrote it by hand on plain white paper. "Thomas, my name is Evelyn Pembroke. I recently received information suggesting we may be biologically related. I was raised by George Pembroke and consider him my father. I am not looking to disrupt your life. I am only trying to understand mine. If you are willing to speak, I would appreciate it."
Aaron. He rewrote the last line 4 times. He mailed it to the address Celeste found through public records.
Thomas called 9 days later. Aaron took the call in the garage. He was in there for almost an hour. When he came back inside, his eyes were red. He knew Evelyn, he said.
I nodded.
He did not know about me. I sat beside him. He said he thought about her for years. He married later, had 2 daughters, divorced. He said, if I want to meet, he will. If I do not, he understands. What do you want? Aaron looked toward the hallway where Sophie's nightlight glowed under her door. I want to know where I come from, but I already know who raised me. 2 months later, Aaron met Thomas at a diner halfway between their towns. George knew.
That was Aaron's choice. He told him first. George listened, jaw tight, hands folded.
Then he said, "Bring back whatever answers you need. They do not change my address." That sentence became another mercy.
Aaron and Thomas talked for 3 hours.
Not father and son.
Not yet.
Maybe not ever.
Just two men with shared biology and separate lives, trying to decide whether a door should stay open.
Thomas cried when Aaron showed him a photo of Sophie. "She has my mother's eyes," he said. Aaron brought that home quietly, like a stone from a grave.
I did not ask to see it.
Some inheritance belongs first to the person who just found it. Evelyn entered what Aaron called the apology tour. At first, the apologies were bad. "I am sorry if you felt hurt. I was only trying to protect my family. I made one mistake. Celeste told me not to respond to any written message that minimized the act. So I did not." Then, 3 months after the dinner, Evelyn sent a letter. Not to Aaron. To me? Natalie. I have rewritten this letter many times because every version sounded like I was still trying to defend myself. I stole your daughter's privacy. I accused you without evidence because I was afraid my own history would be exposed. I used concern as a costume for suspicion. I hurt you, Aaron, Sophie, and George. I cannot undo that. I am sorry. Evelyn. I read it twice. Then I put it in the drawer with the clear gene confirmation and the cease and desist letter. Proof of harm. Proof of apology. Both matter. Forgiveness did not arrive with the letter. People think apology is a key. Sometimes it is only a receipt. It proves something was paid. It does not mean the door opens. We allowed Evelyn to see Sophie after 4 months. Supervised. At a park. 1 hour. George came too, because he and Evelyn were in therapy, and he had decided that rebuilding trust required witnesses. Sophie ran to Evelyn because children love in the present tense. Evelyn hugged her and cried. Sophie pulled back and said, "Grandma, your hair is different." Evelyn had stopped dyeing it. Gray came through at the roots now, and under the gray, in certain light, copper. She touched her hair, then looked at me. "Yes," she said, "it is getting honest." I did not praise her for that. But I noticed progress is not the same as repair. Still, I have spent my life helping children build words one sound at a time. I know the first attempt is rarely fluent. A year later, Sophie turned 5. We held her birthday at our house. Not Evelyn's. Our house. There were purple balloons, a frog cake because unicorns had been replaced by amphibians, and a backyard full of children screaming with the kind of joy that makes adults question whether silence is overrated. George came early to help Aaron string lights. Thomas sent a card. Not signed Grandpa. Just Thomas. It had a drawing of a frog on the front, and Sophie loved it because adults underestimate how little children care about categories when the card has a frog. Meredith came with Blake and kept her phone in her purse. That was growth. Evelyn came too. She asked before taking photos. She did not touch Sophie's hair. Not once. At one point, I found her standing near the kitchen window, watching Sophie chase bubbles across the lawn. Evelyn said, "She looks like Aaron when she laughs." I looked at my daughter, then at Aaron, who was trying to fix a bubble machine with the seriousness of a man repairing a roof beam. "She does," I said. Evelyn swallowed. "And she looks like you." "Yes." She nodded. No argument. No interesting. No pearl bracelet. Just the truth allowed to stand without commentary. That was the closest thing to peace we had managed. I did not forget. I do not recommend forgetting. Forgetting is how patterns come back wearing new clothes. But I also learned that boundaries are not walls built from anger,
They are doors with locks, windows, and rules about who gets a key. Evelyn no longer has a key to our house. She no longer picks Sophie up without one of us there. She no longer owns the story of what family means. George and Erin still work together. Some days are hard. Some days grief walks into the lumber yard wearing a normal Tuesday face. But they remain father and son in all the ways that required showing up. Thomas and Erin speak occasionally, slowly, carefully. No one is forcing a shape on it. That is another lesson. Truth does not have to become a new performance. It can simply become a door you know is there. As for me, I kept the folder, the one I placed on the dinner table. Inside are the lab confirmation, the notes, the screenshots, the letter from Celeste, and one photo of Sophie at 4 years old in frog boots. Not because I want to revisit the pain, because I want to remember what preparation feels like. For years, Evelyn mistook my quiet for weakness. She thought because I did not snap back at every comment, I was not keeping track. She thought because I let her speak, I would let her define us. She thought because she could control a dinner table, she could control the truth. She was wrong. Quiet people are not always passive. Sometimes they are documenting. Sometimes they are waiting until the facts have enough weight to stand on their own. Sometimes they understand that the best way to stop a performance is to let the performer reach the final act in front of the audience she invited. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this. When someone keeps questioning where you belong, look carefully at what they are afraid belongs to them. The person most obsessed with exposing your secret may be guarding the one that can ruin them. Protect your children. Protect your peace. Write things down. Trust patterns. And never mistake a sealed envelope for the truth until you have read every page. My name is Natalie Mercer. My mother-in-law tried to use my daughter's DNA to destroy my family. Instead, it proved my daughter was exactly who I knew she was. And it showed us the one thing Evelyn had spent 35 years hiding. The Pembroke name was never as clean as she claimed. But my daughter's name was. And that was the only legacy I cared about saving.